Well, hi, everybody. I'm Mark Healey. This is Riding the Wave. We are going to talk right now to Paul King, who's running for Congress, the Republican challenger to the incumbent Gregory Meeks. Good morning, Paul, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity to ride the wave.
We'll get right into it. Basically, both with the wave and our efforts to get a debate between yourself and Congressman Meeks, it just seems to me that Meeks really hasn't engaged at all with you and with this campaign. How frustrating has it been having that, not being able to get the opportunity to debate the congressman, and for him really not to engage with you at all during this campaign?
Yeah, I think it's frustrating. It's a disservice to the voters. I mean, I look at it at two levels. One is it's par for the course. He's never around. He doesn't show up at civic meetings. I'll be candid. Sometimes people in Bell Harbor be like, how come, we saw Floyd Flake back in the day and certainly Schumer and Weiner. He's the only congressman who never comes here. Is it because we're white? I'm like, no, he doesn't go to Far Rock either. Last Saturday, I was in South Ozone Park on the east side of the Van Wyck, black homeowners. Woman was beside herself. She's like, I've been here since 1997. I never met the man. So he doesn't engage the community in general. And I think when it comes to the election, he figures he's got it won. He thinks he's got the base of support from kind of that Floyd Flake church area and that he doesn't have to work for it. I mean, he's made a minimal effort. Showing up at in Howard Beach at Charles Park. I joked it's kind of like Kamala Harris going to the border. He's let that place fall apart for the whole time he's been representing it. And now he shows up to, for a campaign to essentially stop. But I guess there's no upside. If he's got to stand on his record. I think he probably knows me well enough that I'm going to challenge him, and people in the community are going to challenge him, and you're going to challenge him. Any journalist is going to challenge him. So, if he doesn't have to, stand up, face the voters, and he could still get reelected, shouldn't be the Democratic way, but it is.
So obviously this is your second campaign, running against Congressman Meeks. What's been the difference with this campaign as opposed to your last one? Have you done anything differently? Have you experienced anything? Have you learned anything? What's the process been like this second time around?
Well, for starters, I was smart enough to buy 2 pairs of shoes. But the biggest difference for me is that when I go into neighborhoods, like for instance, Hillside Avenue, big Bengali community that frankly, I barely knew was there before. I knew there were Bengalis. I just didn't realize how large it was. I met some people the last time who were community leaders. I definitely made a good impression on them. But even if I met with them a few times and they were supportive, I was still a newcomer, untested. And I stayed in contact with people. As a civic leader, I've continued to do that. And so when I came back this time, leaders up there are like, Paul's our guy. The Democrats have gone in a different direction. We're really not Democrats anymore. Gregory Meeks never does anything for us. It's time for us to step up. So I actually, have a team of people working for me. It's fun. I'll walk down Hillside Avenue with, 6, 7 guys who were born in Bangladesh, who are Americans now, and they're talking to everyone on the street. I don't understand a word other than occasionally Paul King. So it's great to have that level of support in multiple communities, the Guyanese communities. I got people help me in some of the Spanish speaking neighborhoods as well. And where the first time they kind of liked me, but this time they're all in, and that's very heartening. Plus it helps me get more connected, with the community. So last Friday night, someone called me up from the Bengali community. I forget where I was. I was like, all right, I'll get to this restaurant. I wasn't even clear what I was going. He's like, it was like an Indian cultural festival. So it was down in the basement. There were more than 100 people. It was a pretty big basement. Great live music. So, I've become more enmeshed in these different cultures. So that's a great experience kind of personally, but politically for the race, having the support of people in the community is going to make a huge difference.
I just want to go back to something you mentioned about being a civic leader, and you've been, the president of the Bell Harbor Property Owners Association. How is being the leader of a civic group, how does that help you as you campaign for elected office? Obviously, you have a lot of different, experiences. How does that help you when you're reaching out to voters, to constituents? How does it help you connect with people that, haven't made up their minds how they're going to vote?
Well, it's kind of two levels. When I took over Bell Harbor Property Owners, I had my dad's model from years ago, where he didn't just look at, here's the Bell Harbor bubble. I'm going to work with people in the Ponds. I'm going to work with people in Arvor and Far Rockaway. You connect with your colleagues and your peers right from the get-go, because we have common problems. We have to work together. So I've done that, at least in the Rockaway Peninsula, just from the start. So I've got relationships there, but that experience of working with people in different communities who have slightly different perspectives on the same problem makes it easy for me to go to the 149th Street South Ozone Park or St. Albans Civic Association, the Triangular Civic Association, and I'm good at listening when I'm there. So I go there, as a candidate, obviously I go to speak, but when I'm there as a civic leader or as a candidate, I also listen to people, and because they know what's going on the ground. I appreciate the unique perspective they have, because they're living the life in these different communities, and if their experiences are different and their problems are slightly different than I see, the fact that I'm able to naturally listen to them and then connect and then say, okay, here's the common ground, here's what we can work on. I'm able to build trust that way. And, people say, all right, he is on our side, and I think we could work together, and maybe we should vote for him too. So it's being a civic leader who's used to working together to solve problems, definitely helps me on the ground in these different neighborhoods.
We've heard a lot of times about, how hard it is in New York, especially New York City, for Republicans to gain momentum, because of, the different majorities that exist. And, in Congress, if you're elected, you've always shown the ability to work, across the aisle, as the head of a civic, you don't pick and choose, which elected official to work with. As a member of Community Board 14, same thing, right? You want the best results for the community that you represent or are a part of. So if you're elected to Congress, how will you be able to communicate to the voters who haven't made up their minds yet that just because I'm running as a Republican, I can work with anybody? Is that something that you feel comfortable telling people? And do you believe that that's something that you can accomplish?
Yeah, I think it's a strength I bring to the table, that a guy like Gregory Meeks, and I'm not knocking him because I think most congressmen are like this. A guy like Gregory Meeks can't work across the aisle to solve problems. He votes with his party almost 100% of the time. According to ABC, that 538 stats, he votes with Biden 100% of the time. So he's just rubber stamping, and it doesn't, no one's solving tough problems that way. I think I'll be in a unique position as a Republican in a largely inner city Democratic district, representing 45% of my constituents will be Black. I'll be able to go to Republicans in areas in Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia where they have some of the same kind of problems, but no one from no Democrat from New York City would ever talk to these people and say, hey, if our people have some of the same problems, how do we solve them together? And then at the same time, even though I'm a Republican, I'll go to representatives in Baltimore and Philadelphia and St. Louis, where they have some of the same challenges we have in Far Rockaway and in South Jamaica, and say, let's work on this together. I'm a Republican, but I'm representing a Democratic district, and I'll pull those people together in ways that no one in Washington even attempts, because they're all just doing what the party needs them to do, and they're working on careers. At my age, I'm not working on a career. I'm just working on solving the problem, and this is one of my strengths. I get this out of my business life as a consultant. People say I'm good at herding cats.
You've touched on a couple of things here with the congressman, but I want to ask specifically, as a candidate who is, opposing a powerful incumbent, What do you think when people ask you, what are Congressman Meeks's, biggest weaknesses? What are the things that, you try to, illuminate to people as to why you would do a better job? If you had to say, Gregory Meeks is not good at this or not good at that, what's missing from Congressman Meeks as a candidate that you can improve upon and certainly challenge?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, the congressman in an interview with one of the mainland newspapers didn't say it directly, but I didn't understand the job. I just have a very different understanding of the job. From my perspective, it's not to be able to put out a press release saying you brought X millions of dollars back to the district. It's actually to improve people's lives. And if you want to improve people's lives here, especially when you have neighborhoods like parts of Far Rockaway where they haven't been able to advance generation after generation, you need to be able to be a systemic problem solver. That means you got to go change the law. That means you got to work across the aisle. He has a 26-year career of, if you go on govtrack.us, they'll say he sponsored 7 bills that became law. If you take out the ones that are renaming post offices, renaming highway overpasses, commemoratives, and the one bill that just has his name on it because he was a committee chair, he's only passed 1 law. He has done nothing to fix the system. Everyone's complaining the system's broken, the system's unfair, which, again, that's my skill set, fixing systems, but he's not even trying to fix the system. He's just in the Washington power game of, I get money, I get a lot of money, $2 million pretty much every year comes in for his campaign coffers. He gets himself reelected. He stays in Washington. And that's the second part of it is, he's not solving problems, but he's also very disconnected from the community. I mean, not just that he doesn't show up or even his people don't show up at these civic association meetings. He's just gone. It's great in his bio that he's from NYCHA, but he's disconnected from the lived reality of NYCHA. It's a lot different now than it was 50 years ago. And I know that from my friends who still live in NYCHA, like Eugenia Gibson, the head of the TA president in the 41st Street houses. She lived there in the early 70s. She left, she came back. She said the people, the conditions are much different. I imagine he has no idea because he's focused on foreign affairs. He wants to do things on other continents. He's detached from the community. So he doesn't know how to go really make change. And he wouldn't even know what the right changes are because he's not here. So I think those are his 2 biggest failures, which makes him like a lot of congressmen, frankly. But he thinks he's a great success. He's living his American dream, but we're hurting here in Queens.
One of the issues you just mentioned about the post office, obviously, as everyone knows, we've had, and the Wave has covered it. John Schilling's done a great job covering what's been going on with the post office. The Rockaway Beach post office has been closed. We haven't heard anything from the congressman about that, which is something that's clearly a federal issue.
Right.
And we haven't heard anything about that. We haven't heard anything about some of the other federal issues that are Rockaway related. What we do hear sometimes is that, well, that's really a local issue. And, we work on the national side of things. And, so can you speak to, because I know that there are people in Belle Harbor that are constantly talking about, how poor the Postal Service has been performing. And certainly it's something that is very, very troubling. And that's something that, for me, when I get all these phone calls and emails from people, what's wrong with the post office? I mean, it affects everything. Have you had any opportunity to reach out to Congressman Meeks about the postal situation since you've been the president of the Belle Harbor Property Owners Association?
I've reached out to his office. I can't get him directly. Joseph Edwards is a kind of the local Rockaway contact on a number of issues and I'm sure including the post office, because we've had checks disappear here. And I'm not saying it's the people right across the street here on 114th Street that are stealing them, but you mail checks are, and they don't, and they're gone. And I think that's been a problem across the system. And usually what you get is, okay, well, I'm going to check in with the chief of staff in the Jamaica office. I'll get back to you. You hear nothing. And I think there's lots of people in Rockaway, regardless of the issue, that can relate to that experience. I agree. You hear nothing. And I think one of the things you have, I mean, as a congressman, you write laws, you vote on laws. You also have the bully pulpit that you got to use sometimes. So, the postmaster general may not directly report to you, but, if you're in town, you could be standing outside the post office on 90th Street. I went by there. It's like you look in, the lights are on. They say they have a computer problem. Well, okay. How about let people get to their PO boxes? It's why have the metal gate down? The computers have nothing to do with PO boxes. If you have medicine or your social security checks or whatever coming to a box, you can't even get access to it. There's no reason for that at all. And his office should be all over the local people, should be all over, people in Washington if necessary, and certainly be complaining to people in Washington, the Postmaster General's office. We have these consistent problems with theft. We have these consistent problems with poor performance. What are you going to do about it? But like you said, he's silent. He doesn't speak up there. Gateway, I hate to say this, but it's like, in the Jamaica Bay unit, we're like the armpit of the National Park Service. You never hear him talk about that, even though he just showed up, did his Kamala Harris border appearance. But that baseball field that I played on in Charles Park, Mark, when this is going back to the 70s or whatever, they had a groundskeeper who used to work at Shea Stadium. It was the best field I ever played on. And now you can't even see where the bases are supposed to be. They've let it go that badly, and everything else falling apart around it. You never hear him say anything about that. Kind of to your point about passing the buck to different levels of government. Sure, NYCHA is New York City, but the money comes from the feds. He's from NYCHA. When you have heat out for months or hot water out for months in some of these places, he should pull a Chuck Schumer. He should be out there with a podium on a Sunday morning saying, why, do the people in this building on 41st Street houses, or why do these people in Redfern have no heat, have no hot water? This is a disgrace. This is worse than a slumlord. Use your weight, put some pressure to improve people's lives. But of course, you can't do that if you're in Washington, D.C.
I think a lot of the points that you're making are valid. And I'm sure that you talk to voters, not just in Rockaway, but in the other parts of the district that you're running for. Certainly there are those frustrations, and you've mentioned some of them that people have responded to you in kind. So how does he keep getting reelected if that's the case?
Well, the Democratic Party does have a strong machine here. He works the system very well. So when he brought back his $15 million in March. He put out his press release, great. Spring brought back 13, Esposito 20, a Republican. That always helps. You're giving money to the right places, and it supports things that are in some of the churches, some of the nonprofits, what the civic associations want, particularly Merrick Boulevard East. It's like the Great Wall of China for me. I have good relationships. I have good experiences when I'm able to get beyond it, but I also have whether civic leaders and even a recently elected official calling around telling a civic leader, you can't have Paul King speak at a civic meeting. So that's their hardcore base where he's going to get, or Democrats will generally get somewhere between 80 and 91% of the vote. That number is very specific because I'm surprised how often when I look at a race, like the Democrats got 91%. They've got a rock solid core they hold together, through their relationships with the civics, some of the civic organizations, some of the churches, and they vote in a block, and they keep any other messages out. We're all the bad guys. So in this case, he gets like a 75,000 vote head start over me. And I will, I can whittle that down when I'm able to make appearances. I win over rooms. I don't have the kind of money. He's got $2 million that comes in like clockwork, mostly from special interests, like 1.4 million of that special interests and unions and corporations. So he spends constantly. I don't have that. If I had that, even a fraction, if I had 10% of that money, I'd get behind that wall, and I think it would all come crumbling down, because I think a lot of the message there is just a big lie. But that's the key. If you got that big base, I'm coming from behind.
When as we mentioned before, there are Rockaway issues, there are state issues, there are city issues, and there are national issues. And unfortunately, as a congressperson, You're expected to deal with all of them. And, how would you, if you're elected, how would you be able to communicate to folks? We just saw it recently at the Bell Harbor, candidates night at the Property Owners Association, where the questions that were asked were really not state questions. They were like city
Right.
questions. And it was more like like almost like a popularity kind of, general questioning that, that the candidates were asked to speak upon. And you didn't have the opportunity to even be on stage with Gregory Meeks because he didn't show up. And
Right.
it's not the only one that he's been invited to that he hasn't shown up. But if you were elected as a congressperson, how would you deal with, your constituency that you represent, who are giving you city issues, national, the city issue, the Rockaway issues, the state issue? How would you deal with that? How would you navigate those issues as the elected representative in Congress?
Well, this is where my business experience comes in very well. I have customers, they and I want to satisfy my customers. Same thing with citizens. Now, sure, and it's easier to be at the top of the food chain, so to speak. I know if you're in Joanne Garriola's position at City Council, and someone's saying, Joanne, I want the border closed. Well, she can advocate for that, but I've got a kind of I'm at the top end, so someone could come to me and say, I want this pothole filled. Well, I'm obviously not going to pass a law in Congress to get a pothole filled, but I've still got the bully pulpit when it's a big enough issue. Plus, I'm going to have in all my offices people who understand that if a citizen comes to us with a problem, it's our problem. So if that means, okay, we need to talk to Joanne or Sylvina Brooks Powers about a sanitation issue, we do. But that's not where it ends. The case isn't closed because we pass it off. I think we all have this experience with 311. You get your case closed and nothing happened. The case is we follow up. So maybe we'll send a letter. We call the councilwoman's office. We send a letter. We check back. We're going to have we'll have essentially a customer relationship management system on our computers. Whatever the timeline is, a week, 2 weeks, a month. Say, did this get resolved? What's happening? And we might not be able to solve every problem. We might not be able to get every pothole filled, but at least the constituent will know we're working on it. And here's the resolution. Even if the outcome's a negative one, we're not going to leave anyone hanging. It's our job to serve, and that's what I'm going to expect from my team here in Rockaway and wherever I put my office on the mainland. I'm not committed to keeping it where next to Rufus King Park, because I think we need one a little more in the heart of Southeast Queens, but wherever it is, customer service, citizen service is going to be the focus regardless of the problem.
It's important what you're talking about, accessibility, accountability. Those are things that are constantly coming up when people, ask us, when we get phone like this here at the Wave, we hear about everything, right? We get phone calls, we get letters, we get people walking in off the street saying, I didn't get my newspaper this week, or I'm not getting my mail. And, and it's like, I don't even have anyone to get in touch with, at the federal level, and that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that I can't call Congressman Meeks's office or I can send an email to every other elected official in Rockaway. Everyone has an email address except for Gregory Meeks. I guess it's a very big, it's a highly kept secret.
Right.
But even when you send emails to his staff, they don't get returned. And that's got to be frustrating as a civic leader, as a community board member, as someone who is running against Gregory Meeks. That when you tell people that, they're like, oh, that can't be, that can't possibly be. Well, it is. And, and look, and I've worked with Congressman Meeks on a few issues over the years. And, once you do get a hold of him eventually, he seems to be a reasonable person. But I think, I've said this about other elected officials, I've said this about people who are running for office. I've never been able to not get you on the phone, Paul. I've never been able to not get an answer from you on an email. And I could say the same thing about Assemblyman Phil Goldfeder. I could say that about a lot of elected officials that, regardless of where they've been on the aisle, because Rockaway is such a unique place, it's such an important place, and it's such a big part of this congressional district. So really, it's to me, it's very troubling that even at the base level of trying to get in touch with the congressman or his staff or his office has become so difficult. And that's got to be frustrating for you as a candidate to have to combat not only the fact that he's an incumbent, but he's not responsive to the needs of Rockaway. So that's got to be frustrating.
Well, it was as a civic leader, and at some point you just give up. It's like, all right, I don't have a congressman essentially. Unless it's unless it's something I have to go bang on his door. We just expect to not get any support, and that's terrible. And a lot of civic leaders feel that way, and not just about Congressman Meeks. I think the word accountability you started with is really important. I think there's a lack of accountability from Congressman Meeks on results, as I've talked about before. He thinks if he could put out a press release saying, "Oh, I got so much secured, for whatever program, I'm done." Well, every congressman does that. That's the bare minimum. He's no accountability for improving people's lives here. But I also think that there's there's the lack of responsiveness. There's no accountability in his offices, and that's the culture that he's essentially created here in this office. And it might be better in the Jamaica office, but when I get transferred there or told to call there, I don't get answers there either. And perhaps when I have no idea what Greg Meeks was like when he first became a congressman. When he wasn't even back in '98 when he first took over for Floyd Flake. But I read a book my daughter gave me a while back from Bill Bradley, Dollar Bill, on we could all do better. And he said so many congressmen get there and they're with great grand plans and good intent, and within a couple of re-election cycles they just become so caught up in the game they get detached. And maybe after 26 years he had good intent, but now he's just focused on the big things that are important to him personally, and he's not accountable since he gets reelected as a matter of course, or most years he doesn't even have any opposition. So he doesn't, why bother being accountable if you got you've got a job for life.
One last thing for me, Paul. Obviously this is, not your first rodeo. This is the second time you're running for Congress. I certainly expect, this time around that I've certainly, I feel that talking with all the candidates, there's going to be a very, because it's a presidential election, there will be a big turnout, especially locally here in Rockaway. Where are you going to be spending election day and night?
I feel very pulled in different directions because, as I said, I've got all these people who are doing so much for me in the Bengali community. So that's all the way on, the northern end of the district and further east. I've got people who are civic leaders in South Ozone Park on the east side, the black side there, who I do so much with all the time. And I was just at their meeting and on Saturday, and 8 people afterwards, we had my signs outside, 8 people took lawn signs home. So it's like, it's so great to have earned all that trust, so I want to be there too. And I want to be in the Guyanese community. And frankly, I want to be home too. I want to be with, Tom Sullivan and Michael Riley, since we've been working so hard together. So I'm going to have to try to find a way to split my time to be with, and those, there are other groups I should have mentioned too, be in these areas where people have given so much of their time to me during this journey in 2024, and be home at the end to hopefully cheer mutual victories.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for spending the time and joining. I know you're very busy and joining us today. Good luck with the rest of your campaign, and we'll see you hopefully on election day.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great day.